Commuters taking the train along the Tuas West Extension can expect early weekend closures starting next month. This will facilitate the preemptive replacement of a circuit breaker component that was involved in a massive train disruption 2 weeks ago. There will be similarly scheduled changes or full Sunday closures next year to replace power cables. All this is happening after 3 train lines went down for more than 3 hours on October the 14th. The Land Transport Authority says more than 120,000 commuters were affected that day. Investigations have revealed an unfortunate series of events. First, a burnt-out power cable along the Tuas West Extension. This should have tripped 2 circuit breakers to isolate that fault, but one of them failed because of a burnt-out component. The concurrent faults led to a power outage affecting Gull Circle to Queenstown on the east-west line and from Jurong East to Woodlands on the north-south line. MRT staff then tried to draw power from a substation at Buona Vista, but an error in judgment caused a power outage that disrupted more than half the stations on the Circle line. The widespread outage led to nearly 7,000 commuters having to leave the trains.
Our reporter Gwyneth Teo joins us live for more on this. Gwyneth, a lot of time and money goes into maintenance and upkeep, but disruptions still happen. What's going on?
Yeah, I think that's the topmost question on everyone's minds. And really, when it comes to the MRT system, one of the buzzwords that we've heard over the past few years is effort and time put into predictive maintenance or trying to identify these faults before they lead to such widespread breakdowns. And, they shared, SMRT and LTA shared that in this case, the maintenance checks on the power cables as well as that component of the circuit breaker had followed the schedule. And in fact, that trip coil, the part of the circuit breaker that had failed in that particular circuit breaker had just been checked 8 days before that incident. So, you can see right now it's very, very burnt out power cables and very, very burnt out trip coil in that circuit breaker. So what's really happening here? There's really clearly some sort of equipment problem, and it's a known problem, in fact, as Alstom, who is the main contractor, they actually shared with us that it was a problem that they had known existed because they had found this very same fault in the power cable 4 times in the past 2 years before this breakdown even happened. And it was precisely on the Tuas West Extension as well. And therefore, they knew it was a problem, and they were going to replace it, in fact, in October, just this month. But unfortunately, the breakdown happened first. But, this really shouldn't be happening for a number of reasons. One, this power cable and this type of circuit breaker, is used quite extensively across our MRT system. And secondly, Tuas West Extension itself is a new extension. It opened November 2017. So the real question is, why here, why now that it's happening? Alstom is bringing back the power cable, bringing back that component, trying to do forensics into it. They do have some preliminary investigations from the earlier faults that they found as well. But in the meantime, they will be replacing all the power cables in the Tuas West Extension to make sure that they're replacing them with better ones, with better insulation to make sure they don't burn out so easily, as well as replacing all the trip coils in that Tuas West Extension again, hopefully to prevent something similar from happening again.
In line with our absolute commitment to operational safety and as a precautionary measure, we are replacing all the power cables with a higher specification and the circuit breaker trick coils in the safest and quickest manner possible.
But Gwyneth, wasn't there also an element of human error in the disruption?
Exactly. So the power cables failing and then the circuit breaker not working the way it should have, that only affected the north, south and east, west lines. Still quite a lot of stations. But at that point, the SMRT staff were trying to regain power in those 2 lines so as to prevent exactly what happened, actually, so as to prevent having to have commuters come off the trains. That was their main priority, try to restore the service, try to let the trains continue running. And what happened there, unfortunately, was just simply human error. In the heat of the moment they shared, they just 3 to 4 minutes that somebody had to make a quick decision on how to draw the power back again, misread a diagram, saw that instead of seeing that only one circuit breaker had been tripped, somehow misread diagram and chose to draw the power from the Buona Vista substation when the fault hadn't been isolated. And because the fault wasn't isolated, it caused a subsequent power outage to happen at Buona Vista substation. And because Buona Vista is in the interchange between the east-west and the circle lines, that subsequently affected the circle line as well, a widespread power outage, causing more than half the stations to go down. So really, it's a very unfortunate situation that, this person, the staff and his supervisor were caught in very tight. A lot of things happening. The two staff in question have been suspended for active duty, but they still have their jobs. They will go for retraining. They will go for recertification. Unfortunately, Singaporeans, not unfortunately, but rather that Singaporeans rightfully have very high expectations of public transport, especially since we've had such an unfortunate almost a decade of so many train breakdowns. So the operator SMRT, as well as regulator LTA and the contractor Alstom, apologies all around. They're saying that they are trying their best to make sure such multiple failures don't happen again.
Right, well, thank you.
We are deeply sorry for the disruption to the train services. It was an evening peak hour, and many commuters on the way back back to home after a long day. When the double fault happened, our focus was how to avoid detrainment. And when detrainment could not be avoided, our focus was to make sure that the safety and well-being of the commuters are our focus.
It's a very stark reminder to us that the effort and the work to keep the train running is an ongoing journey, and there's no room for complacency. Our trains are a very complex system, and just a small part of it not working can potentially cause a major disruption to the whole system.
Thanks, Gwyneth. Gwyneth here there reporting on the recent train faults.